If you place prospecting calls, you probably always hear, I already buy from XYZ company, or we're happy with who we're using now. Well, stay tuned because I'm going to tell you exactly what you should say to turn that around. Okay, so you hear they're happy with who they're buying from. And I know at this point you feel like saying, XYZ company, what a bunch of losers. How dumb can you be? Almost as bad. And what many salespeople actually do is start data dumping a pitch explaining why their company is better. Hey, that's confrontational and only causes the prospects to strengthen their defenses. Another strategy is to simply make a quick exit, which might not be bad depending upon your industry and the quality and quantity of names that you have to work on. Hey, I know a lot of stockbrokers take that route. I mean, after all, if you repeatedly run into a brick wall and then you bounce off and then you take another run at it again, that's not the most efficient use of your time if you've got stacks of other leads staring you in the face. Plus, it hurts after a while. But if your prospect pool is relatively finite, you can't afford to burn through names. You've got to take the next step, and that's to get them talking. Yeah, your best approach is to engage the prospect in a two-way conversation. You see, prospects often say, I'm happy with my present supplier because it's an easy way to get rid of a salesperson. It's instinctive. Jumping into a pitch at this point not only falls on deaf ears, it's not smart because you don't know anything about them yet, right? However, engaging them in a conversation gets them involved, and it gives you some material that you could work with. A suggested route is to learn why they selected their present vendor. Now, once you know what influenced that behavior, you've got some insight into what to say so they'll consider you. But here's what you don't want to say. Oh, why did you choose them? The reason is that why puts them on the defensive. It forces them to justify their selection, and it could be interpreted as an attack on their reasoning. You might as well just poke them in the ribs with a sharp stick and then try to sell them something. And saying, oh, I'm sorry to hear that, or any particular reason you use them, basically has the same effect. Instead, you want to ask questions that open them up, builds rapport, and it eases them into a conversation about how they chose their supplier, again, while avoiding the why word. For example, what influenced the decision to select them? Oh, what prompted the decision to go with them? Notice that the last two questions take the emphasis off of the person and places it instead on the decision. It's not adversarial. It's a soft way to get them talking. And by the way, I don't favor the pretty common, oh, what do you like best about them? Now, some people might argue that it gives you some insight into what they want in a vendor. Well, I maintain it asks them to reinforce their decision to pick that vendor. And that's the exact opposite of what we really want to accomplish, right? Now, let's talk about the competition's weaknesses. What you should do now is ask questions that are designed to extract information not only on what their needs are, but also to point out your strengths and the competition's weaknesses. For example, if you know XYZ company has poor quality, allowing them to charge the lower price instead of yours. So instead of blatantly slamming their workmanship, you could ask a question. So for example, you might say, how often do you have customers return for service because of defective parts? What do you do in situations when the units overheat? Now, it's not you disparaging the competition. They're doing it for you. More importantly, they're reliving their negative experiences as they explain them. How cool is that? All right, I don't want to paint too rosy of a picture here, though. Despite your best efforts, in many cases, the prospect still is not going to budge. But then your best tactic is, let's keep the door open for the future. After all, we've all had those written off prospects that we discarded, thinking we'll never ever do business with them. And then they surprised us with a phone call and said, hey, you called us a couple months ago and things have changed here. Okay? So here are some additional questions that can make that happen more often. Do you have a backup supplier? What type of contingency do you have in place if something were to happen where you needed something in an emergency situation? If anything were to happen with your existing supplier, could I be on the list of people that you'd consider? Or tell them. Please put my name and number in your vendor's file, and if anything happens where they can't provide you something when you need it in a hurry, please give me a call. Selling against someone's existing vendor can be difficult if you make it that way. Instead, let's get them talking, and you might find out exactly what you need to do to get your foot in the door.
I want to send to you free my newly revised book, How to Place the Successful Sales and Prospecting Call, where I take you step by step through each part of my proven 7-step sales process. I also give you hundreds of examples of messaging to use on your calls. Now, we've sold over 10,000 copies of the previous edition of this book, and I'm giving away the revised version free. Why? Well, I'm hoping you're going to love it, and I hope it's the start of a great relationship. Again, the book is free. All I ask is that you help with the shipping and handling. Order it right now.
You might as well poke them in the ribs with a sharp stick. Well, you really got to articulate that one, don't you? You might as well poke them in the eye with, ribs. Poke them in the ribs. Well, you could poke them in the eye. That would hurt a lot, too. I don't want to paint too rosy of a picture here. Rosy, does that sound kind of weird? Should I say rosy, or should I say... Now, I don't want to paint too good of a picture here. Too good's not a good word, right? It should be should be rosier, shouldn't it? I don't want to paint too rosy of a picture here. Actually, I can't even paint, okay?